Hi everybody, good morning. I'm absolutely over thrilled to see everybody here this morning, near the culmination actually of BTB23, which has been just fantastic. I think year on year it snowballs and we gather an amazing growing community of like-minded people together from across the country and now across the globe. I think this panel discussion is a really fitting culmination to this year's BTB, which has been asking, can textiles be a regenerative act for people and planet? And obviously regeneration comes in a myriad of ways, and I think today we're going to see just a kaleidoscope of those ways. So I'm so thankful to the British Council for facilitating this event, because it's just amazing to welcome creative people, particularly in this case from across sub-Saharan Africa, who are really doing extraordinary things in terms of regenerative and creative practice. I'd also love to thank obviously Creative Lancashire and Ed Matthews-Gentle, who facilitates these fantastic conversations in creativity. So without further ado, I think I'd like to introduce Josie Warden, who's going to be our moderator for the day. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Laurie. And yeah, welcome everyone. It's so good to see you here. And there are some people who've come from very close, just down the road, around the corner next door, and others who have obviously come a lot further. But it's really amazing to have this expertise and this experience in the room. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. So my name's Josie Warden. I'm going to be moderating the day, and I'm really delighted to be here. I'm a textile designer by training, but more recently have been working using design process and design thinking of ways of researching and thinking about complex problems and how to address them. And I'm going to start today by quoting from a book by Sophie Tannhauser called Worn, A People's History of Clothing, which I imagine many of you have read already, and if you haven't, I really, really recommend it. It's an amazing book that kind of brings together the impacts and the experiences of textiles across social, cultural, economic issues around the world. And she says that text and textile come from the same Latin root, textere, which means to weave. Sometimes cloth, when used as a text, can say things that are impossible to say in any other way. And to me, I think that's what this biennial and all the work that we're going to be hearing about today, and that some of us got a chance to see yesterday, is really doing, is using textiles as a way through creativity and art of expressing things that are not being said, things that need to be heard, but also expressing new ideas and potential for a more hopeful future for textiles and fashion. So to lay the groundwork for the discussion today, just a few bits of housekeeping. The toilets are downstairs and behind reception. There are not expecting any kind of emergency situations. So if you do hear an alarm, please do leave the building. There's an exit behind you and also this one. Refreshments and lunch will be served after this first section. We are filming today, so if you're asking questions from the audience, please do wait for the microphone so that we can capture the audio as well. The day is going to have 3 parts. So this is first discussion, where you're going to hear from these wonderful panellists about their work and practice. There will be lunch, where you also have an opportunity to look at some of the other installations around the town. And then this afternoon, we're moving more into a collective discussion, thinking about how we turn these ideas of inspiration into insight and action. So it's quite a full day, and we try to create a space where you can both hear and listen to other people's practice, but also have a chance to share. So yeah, hopefully we've created a kind of good balance for you to be able to do that. And we're going to work with the kind of premise of stepping forward and stepping back. So when there are opportunities to join in, please do. We'd love to hear from your experiences, and there's fantastic experience in the room, but also think about how to create space for others to share, because we've got quite a large group of people here. So hopefully we'll leave the day with three things. Firstly, kind of inspiration and appreciation of the work that we're going to hear about, some ideas about things that may be taken forward to the next Textile Biennial, particularly thinking about innovation and invention, and also things that you might come up with yourself that you're thinking, I want to take this forward in my own practice. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to start with this panel discussion. So we've got quite a big group today, so we're going to do it in kind of two sections. And the panellists have all been asked to respond to the question of, can working with textiles be a regenerative act? And I think just before we hear from them, taking a moment to reflect on what regenerative might be, there are lots of different ways of thinking about this. Personally, I really like the description that Giles Hutchins gives, which says, regenerative means creating the conditions conducive for life to continuously renew itself, to transcend into new forms, and to flourish amid ever-changing life conditions. So that's not a new idea, it's kind of woven into all cultures in some way, but it's not the kind of dominant paradigm at the moment. But we're going to hear from the panellists today about different ways of working with regenerative textiles. So let's introduce the panellists. So I'm going to start over here with Sevra Davis. Sevra is the Director of Architecture, Design and Fashion at the British Council, responsible for creating new opportunities for the UK design sector around the world through collaboration and exchange. And her colleague Hannah Robinson, who joined the British Council in 2018 to curate, programme and commission international projects across architecture, design and fashion. She is developing global programmes, including Making Matters and Fashion Revolutionaries. We have Thierry Oussou. Thierry was born in Benin and lives between there and Amsterdam. Described as a social archaeologist, Thierry uses various media, including painting, sculpture and video, and approaches his work from a perspective of a constant traveller between spaces and across continents. In his installation Equilibrium Wind for the British Textile Biennial, Thierry exhibits raw cotton from the plantation of the same name in his hometown in Benin. We have Mario Sierra, who's the creative director of Morn Textiles, founded in the foothills of the Morn Mountains, County Down, by his grandmother, Norwegian textile designer Gerd Hay Adi. Today, they continue to champion the beauty and community of the surroundings and combine this with the craftsmanship, artistry, and design excellence. In a world of standardization, Morn Textiles embrace the unique. Next, we have Nick, who is going to talk to us about Fantasy Fibre Mill, which connects regenerative agriculture to ethical fashion, producing natural fibre yarn, which is grown, processed, and spun in the UK. And finally of this section, we have Yassine Faye, who was born and raised in Senegal, holds a master's degree in business law and postgraduate degree in law engineering. And while at law school, she learns about the impact of fashion in our environment. She created Recreation, a startup whose objective is to promote a sustainable and circular fashion in Senegal. So over to you, Sevra, to get us started, please.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Hello, people behind me. I'm Sevra Davis, Director of Architecture, Design and Fashion at the British Council, together with my colleague Hannah here. Very briefly, the British Council is the UK's cultural relations organisation. We work through the arts, education and teaching of English language, all in service to really just fostering connection between the people of the UK and around the world. In the areas of architecture, design, fashion, and craft, we have a particular focus on working with independent and emerging designers, helping them to connect and see where that takes us. Essentially, we are a convening organization that is interested in the role of international collaboration in helping us to address the most pressing global challenges that we face today. And I think that's probably what you'll hear us emphasizing a lot in response to that question about how textiles can be a regenerative act. We will major on the international collaboration element. I'm shortly going to hand over to my colleague Hannah to say a little bit more about the initiatives that we've been engaged with in the British Council's Architecture, Design and Fashion team. But I want to say that this collaboration together with British Textile Biennial and the designers and innovators that you're going to hear from, specifically that we've supported from Benin, Ghana, Senegal, Kenya, and Zimbabwe is exemplar in the kind of work that we want to be doing. So I hope that actually by hearing from them, that in itself will be part of the answer to the question. Over to my colleague, Hannah.
Thank you. Hi everybody. As Sever explained, we really like to look at design or textiles as a better way to understand each other. And many of our programs, to give you a little bit of context, involve bringing emerging and established designers from all around the world together for residency programs or different modes of collaboration. So the images before this and this one are of the International Fashion Showcase, which ran for a number of years, which involved designers for 40 or 50 countries overall coming together. One which Sunny knows well. Sunny was part of it. And that was a program which really focused on circulation of knowledge, collaboration, bringing designers together to share practice and importantly open up some of these important conversations. We also partner with similar like-minded organisations within the space. So we've worked with Fashion Revolution, who are part of the biennial this year. I'm sure some of you have seen the work with them and are familiar with them. They have offices, they've worked in a huge number of countries, similar to us in terms of their networks. And we've worked with them for a number of years to, again, look at convening and bringing people together, whether that's the format of online open studios, physical collaborations, workshops. The focus, again, is really around looking at these topics and thinking about how can we move forward together and how can we really look at these big global challenges and how can we open up these conversations. We also have a program which is actually launching next week, which is called New Landscapes. It's run in different iterations for 2 years already, and that's about supporting R&D, so research and development in new materials around textiles. The program we have coming up is specifically with India, but we've run it with a number of countries, again supporting new collaborations between UK and around the world. And I think today, you know, from our background and knowledge, I think we're really excited to just have this conversation. And I hope, you know, from our side, I think topics around things like circular economy, extended producer responsibility, these sorts of initiatives which are happening in the EU, I think these things are important for us to think about how can they actually be extended, how can we look at it as a more holistic view. So really looking forward to these conversations. And I just wanted to finish on another exhibition which we have coming up, which is part of a program called Making Matters, which is actually a more interdisciplinary program. And I think for us as well, we find it exciting and important to really look at broader disciplines outside just fashion, outside textiles. So how do we bring in artists, architects, designers, scientists into this conversation? That's obviously been happening for a long time, but I think it's going to be more crucial moving forward. And yeah, really, really looking forward to this conversation, and a huge thank you for all of the amazing artists, designers that have joined us. So thank you all. Step back and hand back to Josie.
Thanks so much, Hannah and Zebra. I'm going to hand over to Thierry.
Thank you, Josie. I'm Thierry Oussou from Benin. Yes, I'm Thierry Oussou from Benin, artist, conceptual artist, and cotton producer. I started to produce cotton to talk about the workers, because we all have nice clothes, but we don't think about who produces the cotton. So we don't think about history of workers, and that is something, but also to go back very deep to the slave history, and related also to the language, because I designed the flag for the workers, but also for my cotton plantation. So this flag represents my territory. And to talk about language, you know that when you want to go, when you want to go further to the culture of something, of some culture, you have to talk the language. But during the slave time, I think also the language was something who can really facilitate the transport of people, because when you bring somebody from Ghana and Benin and you put them together, they don't speak together. They don't speak the same language. So this can also be the way to don't have revolution in the boat. So in the same time, in the factory, when you bring somebody from India to work in the UK and you bring somebody from Pakistan to work in the UK, that is the same thing who still, continue. So they have to speak English, but they don't have time to speak English. So they can produce a lot, but nobody going to talk about them. So that is the main thing in the flag. So each flag is designed in each flag is designed in the language of the country who invite me to show this project. So I try to bring round cotton from Benin to show in different country, to show the diplomacy behind growing the cotton, how it's very monopolized in some country, how it's very democratic in some country, and in the same time to show people what is the round cotton, and to also try to say we have to think about the workers. We have to give something back, and and ARC have power to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thierry. And I'd like to pass next to Mario. Oh, this is the flag that's across the road,
this
the
is
Cotton
the
Exchange.
Hello, I'm Mario Sierra. I'm very grateful to be here, be part of the conversation. I have I'm part of a family business, Morn Textiles, so I'm the third generation, which I suppose in a sense is quite regenerative in its essence. We have a variety of looms in Northern Ireland, hand looms, machine looms, and we learn a lot of what we do from previous generations who used to weave either for us or within our community. Since I've been involved, we've been restoring the looms, bringing the looms back into production and training a new generation of weavers to weave on our looms and weave our designs, which were designed by my grandmother from a very mid-century period. She designed a lot with Robin Day, with Conran, for Liberty. And so we're bringing these designs back into production using very traditional techniques. One project, as well as the looms and the people and the designs, it introduced me to a lot of people over the years. And one project that we've just started last year, or this year actually, just this June, was a crowdfunder, which I haven't got any images of it, but it's where we're trying to bridge the gap between the flax harvest, the field, and a linen yarn. So we're trying to basically, where in Northern Ireland there was hundreds of mills, there's none alive today. So we're trying to bring that back and learn from many of the people who used to work in these mills. So this is our most current project. These are some of the looms in our workshop at the moment. So they're very traditional hand looms that we weave tweeds, furnishing fabrics, and rugs. And that's it. I think I can pass on. Quick.
Thank you. Okay, over to you, Nick.
Hi, so I'm Nick from Fantasy Fibre Mill, which is a business I started together with Rosie, who's sitting over there. She'll be doing this afternoon session. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also really excited to be sitting next to Mario, who I've only ever seen pictures of on the internet. and just a little... yeah, so it's quite funny because we've been doing lots of business pitches this year, and we always name Mario as a competitor. No, not at all. But that's just because, there aren't many people who do this kind of thing in the UK. So you're not really a competitor. You're a friend. So So what is Fantasy Fibre Mill? So Fantasy Fibre Mill is, as Mario said, it's the missing middle between, on the one hand, the farmers and the agricultural side of things, and on the other side, fashion designers. So there's lots of fashion designers who want to work with linen. We actually believe many more fashion designers should work with linen. Linen should be a much, much bigger part of our wardrobe. It's a really diverse fabric. Anyway, lots to say about that. Flax isn't really grown in the UK anymore, but it definitely could be. It was. But the problem is, if it was, there's no one to turn it into linen yarn. And at least the existing solutions would cost you millions of pounds to buy, and you're buying into global capitalism and textile stuff, which we all know is not a good thing, to put it succinctly. So what is our solution? Well, our solution is to build the machinery ourselves. So this year we've got funding from Innovate UK to set up a pilot mill in East Linton, so that's about 40 minutes from Edinburgh, in the steading there, which we're renovating into a flax mill, where it will have all under one roof flax to linen yarn production, so the machinery to go all the way through. Very briefly, the machinery, so if you know anything about linen production. So there's a series of machines that you need to use. So there's a breaker, a scutcher, hackler, and then drafting, spinning. So this is, we're building this machinery ourselves, doing research, working a lot with international collaborators. So that's the advantage of open source work, is that we've got collaborators in Germany who initially designed the spinning machine that we're building off of, and collaborators in America, a lot through the Fibershed network, which is another fantastic initiative. I can see this has not come out properly. I did align it when I did it at home. So to respond to the provocation, how are we acting regeneratively? Well, we're acting, that means we're making yarn, we're building machinery, we're sharing knowledge, important action. And in what way are we regenerative? So I guess there's social, environmental regeneration. So we're localizing supply chains, we're going to hopefully provide empowering work, we're going to use soil healing agriculture and produce climate beneficial textiles. Act together, act with us. So these are our handles. We've also got GitHub and Discord, if you're for the more nerdy ones amongst you.
Thanks so much, Nick. And first, last but not least of this group, over to Yassine.
Hi everyone, I'm from Senegal, a very sunny country compared to here. And we have 3 months rain every year. So you can imagine the weather. So if you want to come with me. So I'm a business lawyer. I think I got bored and I decided to change my life and become a designer. So I created Recreation, which is focused on promoting circular and sustainable fashion. And we do so through 2 components, which is the fashion brand that is called Recreation Upcycling, and a mobile application platform called Tigoric. The brand has been existing for 4 or 5 years now formally, and we make mainly clothes, bag, and we started doing the COVID making decoration item because we feel like people were not really buying a lot of clothes, and then in Senegal actually, and then we started making decoration item. Tikori is a mobile application platform that is going to be launched in December in Senegal. And the goal is to, in Senegal, in my country, people really enjoy going to celebration. And whenever they go to wedding, they like wearing nice clothes. But the thing is, they don't want to wear the same clothes twice. And they end up having like 1,000 clothes in the closet that they don't want to wear anymore. So the mobile application platform is going to allow them to sell the clothes that they don't need anymore, just for us to share our closet. I think it's going to be a good way to reduce our footprint, carbon footprint. So here you can see some picture of what we have designed, just to give you a little bit, because like some people think whenever it's upcycled, it doesn't look good, but it's not the case. You can see, I believe it looks good. So basically, I grew up during my holidays. I really enjoy crafting and creating stuff out of my hands. And I also grew up seeing big bale of secondhand clothing coming from everywhere in the world, including the UK. And for your information, people used to say in Senegal that bales that come from UK are better quality. I don't know if it's true. But like, I just felt like I wanted to be a designer, but like instead of just going to the market and buying fabric, I just better go to the second-hand market. We already have like material that are already available. Why not using those? And then that's the idea that I have to create just clothes and bag and whatever using the second-hand that we already, the second-hand clothes that we already have in mind. I just wanted to, it's amazing, like I've been asking people around here, but they don't really realize that the clothes that you're giving away to charity are not really given for free to people that actually need it. It's a big business in Africa, in our country. We have like big market full of bale of clothes. And I wanted to take the opportunity to sensitize people around here about how those clothes end up in Senegal. It's good because like I have resources that I'm using, some of your clothes that I'm using to create new clothes, and maybe you bring it back here and sell it to you guys. But like it's still good, but like we realize that most of the bales that we have, like almost like half of it is not good quality clothes. It's clothes that no one can use anymore. So I just wanted to sensitize people around here about the need for you to think twice before sending those clothes to us, because it ends up in landfill, and our government don't have the means for now to just take care of. We have a lot of problems. We don't have enough hospital. We don't have enough schools. So it's another issue that we are going to deal with. Like our landfill are full of textile. Like for example, in Senegal, we have like we are investing a lot in plastic, but people don't really invest in like textile recovery. We don't have that type of infrastructure yet. Just to finish, I'm gonna say we as a textile worker, we need to be more conscious of all things related to sustainability. One of my biggest dreams is to set up a material innovation. Like I'm not only into upcycling. I'm trying to set up a material innovation space in Senegal, which will be a space for people who have ideas. I'm what is called a why not person. I always say why not. I'm thinking about maybe creating clothes out of mangoes. We had a lot of mangoes in Senegal. I'm like, why not? So this space will be a space that will be dedicated to young people who have ideas of what will be the textile of the future, what will be the dye, natural dye of the future, what would be the haberdashery. I'm thinking about haberdashery because like most of the zippers and everything, even like the smaller buttons, it come from abroad. We don't make that in Senegal. So I'm thinking about a space where we can actually just create the textile of the future, whether it is natural dye, whether it is haberdashery. That's my biggest dream, and I hope I will be inviting you to visit my material innovation space very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josie. And thank you to all of our first panelists. I know we've already heard some amazing things that are going on and inspiration. So keep sort of that in mind as we move on to our second group. And we're going to start with Aïssatou Soho Dia. So Aïssatou is a Senegalese designer and founder of the brand Solku. She is passionate about fashion, African culture, and textile treasures of Africa, where craftsmanship celebrates the authenticity, tradition, and cultural richness of African artisanal crafts. Then we have Danai Madondo. Danai is a Zimbabwean fashion designer, textile artist, and storyteller based in Harare. Her work engages with multidisciplinary practices and multi-global and local traditional handicrafts to create texturally rich textiles through a regenerative design process that reduces textile waste. We'll then hear from Sunny Dolat. Sunny is a Kenyan fashion stylist, creative director, and production designer. In 2012, he co-founded the Nest Collective, whose work spans film, music, fashion, visual arts, and literature, and is based in Nairobi. And his work, Return to Sender, is showing here at the British Textile Biennial. Kwame Boyson is a Ghanaian art and fashion enthusiast, and he is the co-founder and head of design at Afro District and The Revival, with a passion for revisiting second-hand clothing from Kantamanto, Ghana, the largest thrift market in West Africa. And his work is also showing here. He's working with Commonwealth, and the show Fast, Fast, Slow had its first performance last night and will also be showing again this evening. And then last but not least, Jeremy Hutchison, who is a British artist based in London, using performance to disrupt systems of power. Much of his work intervenes in consumer culture, subverting the mechanisms that sustain it. And for the biennial here, Jeremy has produced a series of sculptures, billboards and public workshops. And these cloth monsters stalk our streets, bringing back the clothes that we had discarded as a shocking reminder of the overconsumption of fashion. So over to you, Oussou, to get us started, please.
Hello, I'm Oussou. I'm happy to be part of this discussion with all of you. Let me first introduce my clothing brand, Solco. Solco is more than a clothing brand. We believe that clothing should be more than a simple article. They should be a statement of individuality, a reflection of our shared values, and a commitment to a better future. What sets Solco apart is our dedication to harmonizing tradition and innovation. We draw inspiration from vibrant culture around the world, infusing our creation with the rich heritage of African textile. African textile tells stories passed down from generation to generation. And I think working with textile can indeed be a regenerative act, and we can draw valuable lessons from Senegal, where sustainable fashion has been a tradition for generations. And an intriguing example of this approach is the part of patchwork practiced by the Baifal. So the Baifal are members of a Sufi brotherhood in Senegal, and they have developed a unique approach to sustainable fashion. They create clothing using reclaimed fabric pieces, creatively assembled to form a new garment. This patchwork practice not only reduces textile waste, but also honors cultural history and craftsmanship. And this example, reflecting on this Senegalese tradition, we can see how patchwork and other textile rules practices can contribute to the regeneration of the global textile industry. And I think regeneration through fashion goes beyond waste reduction. It also involves giving exciting textile a new lease on life. This concept is one of, I have a personal example that illustrates this concept. Is one of my creation, a deny corset. Originally, this corset was a simple deny shirt. By transforming it, I breathed new life into a garment that might have otherwise been discarded. This is a tangible example of the power of recycling in the textile industry. The transformation of used or clothing into new pieces, like a deny corset, demonstrate how working with textile can be profoundly regenerative. It also shows how creativity plays a crucial role in a sustainable fashion. Another way to promote regeneration through fashion is by using African woven fabric known as pine. This is one of my creations. These fabrics carry a rich cultural history and are testament to traditional craftsmanship. By incorporating these textiles into contemporary clothing, we pay homage to this tradition while promoting sustainability. The use of African woven fabric emphasizes that fashion regeneration encompasses not only environmental aspect, but also cultural preservation and the appreciation of artisanal skills. This is an example of how working with textile can be a regenerative act too, not just on the environmental front, but also cultural and socially. It's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to Danae, please.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. So I would like to talk mostly on my practice and what I focus on mostly as a textile artist, although it sort of flows into my work as a fashion designer. My work is strongly rooted in the contemplative, intuitive, experimental space. Right now, I come from a country where our fashion industry I could define as being non-existent, is completely fragmented. And I feel like I'm in a space where I'm trying to discover my identity through fashion, to tell my stories through fashion, to express my imagination and my experiences through fashion and the textile design that I create. I'm actually a self-taught textile artist. It actually started during the period of COVID. And for me, the mantra that I've always used when coming up with design, whether it's fashion or textile, is use everything. As an independent fashion designer, I didn't have the resources or the funding or the backing to necessarily buy the most expensive materials or to be able to import the most expensive materials. So I had to look at my environment and see what I had available to me. I think a couple of us on this table have mentioned how in all our countries we have a situation with bales, the dumping of bales within our space. And for me, the idea of using something that has been worn by somebody else was always something so like, you must be lying. You have to be lying to me. The idea of me having to go technically into the trenches and hunt for material, deconstruct in order to make something new was something that I never thought would be my reality. But I realized that through lack, through trial, it really pushes your creative muscle. And I think because of that, we're living in a space in Zimbabwe now where we have so many innovators that are utilizing waste, transforming it into new beautiful textiles, new beautiful appliques. For example, with my work, as I said, it's really intuitive and it's very sensory, but it also focuses on mythology, African mythology within my space. And often when I create, I'm not so focused on the end product of the garment. I'm interested in the process, enjoying the process, the idea of touching, creating, making, and possibly even making a mistake and having that mistake be something that is beautiful and even presenting that to the audience, an unfinished garment, but to me, it's finished. I often feel like in fashion, there's this huge obsession of end product, what is it going to be? But for me, I actually feel like I'm having a conversation with the things that I'm creating. I often say that sometimes I feel like a conduit, like a vessel where I'm creating and then suddenly I feel like, why not make a knot or two, you know? And then I make that knot, and that is the intuitive side that comes into play, and I feel like that's where innovation comes from. Even the idea of not necessarily looking at generic materials or going into a fabric shop to get materials, but maybe even into a hardware space to access a rope or cables or whatever it may be that I can access to create these art pieces that I create that sometimes can be wearable, cannot be wearable. It really depends on the individual. But for me, it's the mystery of creation that is the most important element of everything that I do, and having that dialogue between the maker and the object and what it is that you're going to eventually create. And I think that is what art has a voice. It has a voice, and I feel like it uses artists to simply speak through us. And I feel like being circular, being sustainable is actually the most natural way for us to be. And I think the way that in which we're functioning in today is actually very unnatural. When I think of how I grew up in my house, not even my house, my country, we were a DIY people. it was always use everything to its maximum capacity until you can't use it anymore. Breathe new life into things that you think no longer have life. How can you resuscitate things over and over and over? And I feel like that is the sort of mindset that I function with today, and that is where innovation, new textiles, and new ways of seeing a community and a culture is breathed into life. So pretty much that's my practice. And when it comes to mythology, like, for example, this creature that is before us, I had no idea that this is what it was going to be. I just knew that whatever I create with my hands somehow is always going to translate back to fashion, because fashion is my language for communicating my culture, my expression, my existence, and the mood of the times in which I exist in today. So when we had the opportunity to exhibit this earlier this year at Fashion Scout under the Creative Africa DNA, it was almost like, what are these pieces that you have? And I said, I don't know, let's just do what they want to do. And this mythical creature came out, and there is a consistency with my work when it comes to mystery, mythical. I think I escape reality through my work because I believe that what is in my head is far more exciting than reality, and I think that's the beauty of art. It allows us to escape, it allows us to create new worlds and new realities, and the beauty of working with the waste and saying, I'm going to breathe new life into you. That's an exciting challenge to me. Initially, it was something that I shunned a lot. I was like, oh my gosh, you're basically saying I'm broke. But I think in that brokenness, it gave me pieces to sort of like put together to create something that was really unique and original, and really, truly, what I believe is beautiful and very texturally rich. And I feel like, I hope that years from now, when people look at my work, and as a Zimbabwean designer in 2024, it can be used as a reference for new textiles, as an expression of how Zimbabweans see ourselves today based on ourselves and our existence, which I think is so important, because when I started my journey as a fashion designer and I was trying to look back at my Shona tribe and the references that existed, it was so difficult finding just references that I resonated with. And I just felt like, well, I exist. You know, like I exist, I absorb my environment on a daily basis. What can I do with it and what can I create? And this is some of the stuff that I've come up with that's just so texturally rich. And strangely enough, I feel is very African. And I think that's really important, to be able to redefine what being African is, being able to redefine what it means to be Zimbabwean, because in a sense, we're always seen as a monolith. There's only one image of our existence that's out there. And I feel like my role is to contribute to that diverse narrative of who we can be. But that's pretty much my summary. I'll just dash along to the next slides that I didn't talk about, but that's my work. All experimentation. And I often make stuff from just discarded stuff that maybe my friends, my friends will drop off and be like, what can you do with this? And for me, like, if you were to zoom into individual pieces of the work that's been created, there are different handcraft techniques that I've used, from crochet to macrame. I'm very experimental in the things that I do, and similar to Yaz, I always ask why not, you know, which is funny. I think that's why we click. I always ask why not. Why can't this be something that's wearable? And if not wearable, like, why can't we just enjoy it as a piece of art, the intricacies and the beauties and the meditation and healing power that comes from just making and continually knotting and breathing new life and beauty into the world.
Thank you so much. Over to Sunny.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Sunny, and I hate to be the person who follows up Danai's very beautiful and ephemeral presentation by taking us to the literal dump. So this is a dump site in Nairobi called Dandora. It's the largest dump site in East and Central Africa. Dandora was declared full 15 years ago, and every day still hundreds of trucks pull up and continue to dump into this site. In the last quarter, Kenya imported 55,000 tons of secondhand clothing. Because there's been an increase in consumption of fast fashion in the global north, it's meant that the quality and essentially the secondhand clothing that's coming into Africa is secondhand fast fashion clothing. I think we can all agree that new fast fashion clothing is already pretty questionable in quality, and you can only imagine the state it is in as secondhand clothing. And so a lot of traders talk about having to discard anywhere between 50 to 60% of every single bale. So that means in the last quarter of the 55,000 tons of secondhand clothing that arrived, 25,000 tons went straight to Dandora. This means that we are now responsible for the waste management of the global north. We are dealing and handling and managing textile waste that wasn't generated by us, in addition to our own waste, which we already are not doing a great job at. And so that's the reality of the space. One of the other things, in addition to this sort of like ecological nightmare that we find ourselves in, is that secondhand clothing is actively undercutting the growth and development of our local textile and garment manufacturing sector. When you go to the secondhand clothing markets, you can find a pair of jeans for £1. Actually, no, less, because now the exchange rate is like the shilling is doing weird things. So pretty much like £0.50. And there's absolutely not a single producer or manufacturer who can compete with that price point. Onto a more slightly hopeful note, I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight and present the works of creators and makers who I think, whose practice really embodies the idea of regeneration. Nko is a designer from Nigeria who predominantly uses second-hand denim. And what's amazing about Nko's practice is through this interaction with second-hand denim over the years, Nko has developed a new textile, a Nigerian textile called the Kala cloth. And so she uses secondhand denim that she finds in the markets and weaves it using a very old indigenous weaving technique that's used in the making of ashoke, which is a Nigerian textile, and developed this new textile called the Kala cloth. And I really love the idea of a new African textile that uses sort of like this really old indigenous knowledges, but also uses these found materials and reclaims them from these markets and these landfills to create these new textiles. I think for me really signals what the future of textile development in Africa could be and what the future of regeneration on the continent could look like. Similarly, there's a designer from Uganda called, the studio is called Buziga Hill, and the designer is called Bobby Kolade. And Bobby has a slightly cheekier approach. So this is a project actually called Return to Sender. And similarly, Bobby goes into the markets and buys secondhand clothing, deconstructs them and reconstructs them into these really fun and quirky designs, and sells them into the global north. What's really funny is that we have another project by the same name, Return to Sender, and which some of you may have seen. It's in the Cotton Exchange. And our plan with the project was to buy bales in Nairobi and ship them to Germany for Documenta. And we found that the EU has laws in place against the importation of waste, which is hilarious. And so we weren't able to do that. But Bobby is really clever because what he does is that he makes all of these, he buys everything in Kampala. He has his studio in Kampala and he makes these really amazing clothes. And he then does these trunk shows in Europe. And so he's able to, resell them without them being considered waste. And I think that that's a really fun approach to his practice. And so I just wanted to show these two examples as, for me, two designers, makers, and practices who have a really interesting approach to regeneration. Because I think for us on the continent, regeneration, upcycling, recycling are things, is a practice that we've grown up around. When I was in primary school, we used to have a subject called home science, which is a very bizarre subject. But part of home science is that we from like 4th grade up till 8th grade, we learned how to sew and to mend things. So I remember being like, I can't remember how old I was in 4th grade. I must have been like 7. But about 7 years old, I knew how to sew. I knew how to like change buttons and things. And so what's funny is that the idea of a regenerative practice for us is something that feels very embedded. We're not very quick to discard materials or clothing because there's a real awareness and acknowledgement of how precious the materials that go into the making of clothing are. And so there's a way that for us regeneration feels indigenous, and that the future of textile has obviously sustainability at the heart, but it also has tradition and heritage. The last slides are of the pavilion that's at the Cotton Exchange, which if you haven't seen, go see. The work is called Return to Sender. Yeah.
Thank you. And over to Kwamina.
Hello.
No.
Is it still morning? Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for taking the time to come by this wonderful event. I feel like this is usually always the beginning of a good conversation. When you have been sent information like flyers out that says that talks about a certain topic, and then you find a time to say that I want to come and listen to what it actually is about. That's the first point of the conversation, to be curious enough. And I would like to also throw the light on the fact that, we are all wearing clothes, so there's that innate curiosity, whether we are aware of it or not. There's that curiosity to find out what we can do, or what we can know about this conversation around the textiles that we are wearing. To me, textile is one of the things that binds all of us, because we are wearing it. Wherever it's coming from, whoever is making it, it's something that we are engaging with. So this is just to say that thank you for taking the time to come. I'm Kwamina Boyson, founder and head of design, The Revival. Myself and a very good friend of mine set this organization up out of a lot of love for clothes. We grew up thinking and dreaming to be designers, and then all of a sudden, we realized that, it just turned out to be so frustrating to know that more than 85% of our population, the wardrobe of the population of our country is not clothes that are made from our country. And these are clothes that, we wear and we are always looking good. We get all the compliments when we are walking around, which is good because we feel like design has a lot to do with styling as well. And so even though we didn't make the clothes that we are wearing, we've been able to find a way to make it look as good, good enough to be getting the compliments that we've been getting. And so through this, we're able to kind of build a culture just around our community. And so we would just loot our parents' wardrobes and just go out and take images. And the idea was to address certain issues coming from a certain, a particular era in our history where we were not particularly born. So So I would like a very old generation. They would dress in a certain way. We felt very drawn to those kind of clothes, like vintage clothes, and it was mostly because those clothes were made with a lot more intention than the clothes that are being made now. So that also sparked a certain conversation, and so we would. So that image over there is myself and a very good friend of mine. We would usually go into the market, Kantamanto, to find some clothes to style ourselves. And we would find out that these clothes, most of them are too heavy for this condition or this climate. And so we would find out so much that didn't sit well with us. And we would also see that so many of the traders over there were mostly women, and these women would be deconstructing clothes and making them conducive for either the weather, or they would try and make it conducive to make economic sense to them, because they might have invested a lot in buying bales that they were not privy to the content of the bales. I don't know how well you people know what bales are, but bales are the boxes that the clothes are packed in when you give your clothes out to charity. So they come into the country in these bales, and the people who buy these bales do not have the chance to know what the actual content of the bales are. So they would have to find a way to make it reasonable to be able to sell. And so the next thing that they'll have to fall on is design skills or upcycling skills, that we would call it now. But what was interesting for me was that they didn't have to call it upcycling. They didn't have to call it, all of the things that we are calling it now. And so that was something that I found interesting as someone who wanted to be a designer. I felt that these people taught me a lot that design is not something that is just to make us look nice and cool, but it's actually a natural way of life, And so that has been our main inspiration, that these people have been able to build a whole, they've been able to build something that we can take, And for us, upcycling, we use upcycling and sustainability and all of these words. We adopted it because it's a way to communicate now for us. So, like Dola said, upcycling and hand stitching or whatever it is has been very part of our culture in our homes. Like, I'm sure almost every mom or every auntie somewhere in homes has like a sewing machine somewhere, mending kits somewhere. So for us, it's really about bringing what the older generation has already built for themselves as a natural way of living, and bringing that ideology to a younger generation, which maybe we can call like the digital generation, and how we can cross these worlds, bringing the digital generation what they are learning and what they've been socialized with in terms of textile language, how we can bring this ideology into the older generation, how we can bring the older generation into the younger generation. And so for us, upcycling is more like we are also kind of upcycling the ideology. We are regenerating a new way of seeing fashion in a way that suits an older generation suits a younger generation, and then how we are able to leave this as a new package for another generation that is coming. So to tie into the idea of regeneration, because we think that regeneration, before you're able to regenerate something, you must have something to build on. So our idea is to build a community where if it just feels natural, even with the idea that there's going to be a time that people don't have to be using like words like sustainability, waste colonialism, and all of that. It just has to come from a very natural place. So this is us in the market. We would go to the market and just pick up things, whatever it is that we get. So most of the things that we get are usually the things that these women are not able to sell at all. Like that's the lowest grade of secondhand, the secondhand things that they've been able to collect. Those are the things that we go for, and then we bring it up to our studio, brainstorm on the best ways to make it something purposeful. We would usually invite people in the community as well, because we feel like design and like real impactful design has to involve the people or the person who is going to wear it. So we would design the clothes halfway and try and invite people in to be part of the design process as well. It's unfortunate that the images don't do justice to what I'm saying. But yeah, that's the main purpose of our studio. And so we would also have pop-ups, open it up to the public to come in to learn about upcycling. So our design process also would usually have a certain element of workshop, because we feel like we have to redesign the community of upcycling. As much as we design the clothes, it's also very important for us to design the space and the culture. So this is an image of myself and one gentleman who is traditionally makes flags. So there's a group of people in my hometown where I come from. But I live in the city, but I come from Cape Coast. I don't know who knows about Cape Coast. Cape Coast is one of the towns on the coast of Accra, and they have a very peculiar tradition of making flags from just fabric that they come across. And I found it so beautiful that they were able to convey whatever they were feeling, And so this group of people are called Asafo. Asafo just means a group of warriors or a group of people who would want to oppose something in a community. So they would put their ideologies and their feelings or whatever it says that they disagree with in the community. They will put those energy, instead of, going to say that, hey, like being violent, they would rather express that on a flag. And I found it very interesting how their point of material was textile. And this is something that has been going on for several centuries. It's been going on for several centuries. And it was interesting for me to discover this because it also tells me that Kantamanto, as I have known it for the past decades, isn't only the point where textile that wasn't made in my country has been able to find itself into my country, And so that was also an interesting thing for me. And I'm currently working with this community to be making these flags, to discover myself and how they were able to keep these stories and how these stories are connected to textile. And before I continue, so this space is a space where, or this town is a town where
Kwamina, sorry, we might need to wrap up in a second.
Say that again?
Can we wrap up in just a couple of seconds, if that's okay? Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So basically, this as a textile artist, I'm working with this community to make flags, to kind of map the history of the people in the Caribbean and textile. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we'll hear more from you later. Thank you. And finally, can I pass over to Jeremy? If we can hear from you for a couple of minutes, and then we've got quite time, I think, for a couple of questions before we move into lunch.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeremy. I'm showing a work here at the Textile Biennial, and I'll let you into the secret that I didn't know I'd be sitting here, so I don't know what the next slides are, but we'll find out together. Yes. That wouldn't be the slide I'd put first, but that's cool. In 2017, I went on an artist residency in Senegal, and I was cycling around, and I saw bales and bales and bales of clothes. Now, my art practice is designed precisely around the intersection between consumerism and empire, and I'm interested in sort of trade flows of stuff, where they're from and where they go, you know, the stuff that hits Oxford Street and whatever. And I didn't know anything about any of this. And I asked a guy, where are these clothes from? What are they? He said, they're from your country, they're from the north. And so this project began of me exploring, like, sort of in reverse, if you like, this sort of passage of these clothes, which I came to understand. Oh, is that the one slide I get? Maybe that is. Anyway,
Maybe give up on the slide.
Yeah.
I was.
There we go.
Oh, look, there was another. Well, that's a picture. So in Ghana, they call these clothes. They call them dead white men's clothes, and so I became interested in the idea of performing the dead white man, performing my own subject position as a white male, Western consumer. So the work was actually made in Senegal, but I performed this monster, if you like, and what do monsters want to do? They want to go home. So, like, I perform this kind of animate this sort of deathly stuff, and the monster rises from the market. This is all in a video that if you want to go over, you can see. And then he sort of haunts Dakar, looking for the shipping containers to go back to the global north. Mm-hmm. Like Frankenstein's monster, he wouldn't know where he was from. So then the monster, he then goes back up the supply chain, very much like, some of these discussions we've been having, like return to sender. He goes back up, and so he appears, in the streets of London, and like trying to work out like where my own entanglement with this kind of toxic mess of secondhand clothes, goes to the financial capitals, Canary Wharf. He goes to shopping malls, to the high streets. Is it or residential streets? Is it the sort of person who puts their clothes, well-meaning British consumer puts their clothes in sort of second-hand bag, and so if you like, it's a spectre of waste colonialism. And the word waste is so critical because even if the clothes, we might consider them sort of in quite good nick, what is the industrial supply chain they go through? We either put them in. So I get a bag through my front door, and it's a little sort of, and I've participated in this historically, of course. You get a bag through the front door, and it's essentially, it's got a charity logo on it, but it's basically a bin bag, and it says, something, well-meaning, and so you put clothes in, and you leave it. Where do you leave it? You leave it out by the bins, or you go down to the supermarket car park, and there you got the bottle bin, and then the electronic waste bin, and then you got the textile bin, and so essentially, these things operate through the supply chains of waste, and so if a context defines what a thing is, then it's waste. And anyway, so the work is a series. It's essentially rooted in performance, but then expressed through these wearable sculptures. Oh, and video and sculpture and installation and billboards. The work was shot, these images were shot by a Spanish fashion photographer called Dani Pujalt, who also shoots, like, he just shot Chloe Savigny for Zalando, not Zoolander. And so I was really interested in sort of mobilizing this aesthetic of fashion editorials and high street branding, kind of being the sort of toxic kind of parasite inside the machinery. I think to understand a monster, you've got to climb right inside it. What else to say? We did some workshops. The first image you saw were hundreds of little zombies, miniature effigies, if you like, which were made by hundreds of participants all over Lancashire over the last few months. So, and so they become, if you like, they sort of play into the tradition of the kind of the effigy, the shamanic doll, the thing that, thank you, that, you could almost transpose the sort of the morbid spirit of something into a doll. So if you like these, the participants were sort of almost producing effigies of their own consuming, habits. So you can go and see them. They're in a separate site. And then the last thing I wanted to say, which was something that came up in a conversation with Sunny, we did a conversation with Amber Butcher, and I quoted something that Cheikh Sigil, I don't know if you've come across him, he's a Senegalese fashion designer, and he said to me, he said, how do you colonize a person? He said, throw all their clothes in the trash, throw all the history, the tradition, the culture, throw that in the trash, and then replace it with your clothes, but your cast-off clothes, the hand-me-downs. Dress him in your hand-me-downs so that he looks like you, but like a cheap version of you. And that's how you colonize a person. And essentially, he wanted me to think about this second-hand clothing trade as a colonization of the wardrobe. And so, if you like, and he educated me enormously on this. So if you like, this work is a vessel just to convey some of the, and as you were saying, to just transmit to the global north some of the experiences that I have been educated through and the ideas that have been taught me and through this project using sort of a zombie kind of humor. Oh, can textiles be a regenerative act? I think they can, and how? Through zombies, because a zombie is essentially a corpse that refuses to die, and so they regenerate and they come to haunt, and so it's probably enough.
Thank you. And thank you again to all the panellists. I know we have run over a bit on time in terms of questions, but it felt like there was so much rich stuff here that we didn't want to just completely rush through it, and there is plenty of time this afternoon to get into a deeper discussion. So we have got a couple of minutes before we break for lunch. So I'm wondering if anyone's got any kind of burning questions that they'd really like to ask at this point that's particularly about practice and that maybe isn't going to kind of elicit an enormous response from someone, but it's sort of short things to clarify. Perfect. Can you just wait for the microphone to come round to you, please? Oh, there we go. Thank you very much.
Okay, just quickly, Jeremy, the colonization happened a long time ago. Slavery and colonization, and the denial of original dress, so that happened a lot longer. Sunny, I have a question for you. Your brilliant work in the exhibition. I had no idea that there was nasty bales. Whenever I thought there was more selection. My question is, why does Africa continue to receive this waste? And Thierry, your beautiful work. Thanks. Do Benin people have an opportunity to use the cotton that you grow? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And it's a valid question, and we ask ourselves every day. But I'd like to share an example just to show why Africa continues to find itself in a place where we have to receive this waste. So in 2016, the EAC, which is an economic bloc of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi, set into motion a plan to ban second-hand clothing. It was going to be a phased ban that would take full effect in 2020, and in the 4 years that the ban would be implemented, all countries were going to set up cotton farms. They were going to open up mills and manufacturing and garment construction factories, and we're also going to train tens and thousands of tailors. So the plan was announced, made all the news, and the American government responded by saying that if the EAC was to ban second-hand clothing, that they would then have to revise the terms of a trade agreement called the AGOA agreement, which is an agreement between the US and a number of countries in Africa that allows kind of like small and medium-sized businesses to be able to export into the US. So, unsurprisingly, Kenya backed out of the plan to ban second-hand clothing, Tanzania backed out, Uganda backed out, Burundi backed out, and the only country that went ahead was Rwanda, who was subsequently removed from the AGOA agreement. And what that tells us is, one, how profitable the movement of second-hand clothing is to the global north. It's really funny how the global north will always talk about wanting Africa to industrialize and grow economies and revamp and revitalize manufacturing, but at the same time really actively work to undercut that same manufacturing that would allow for things like self-reliance. And the reason that the sector is so profitable, one, is because it's literally a multi-million-dollar industry that profits the global north. And two, they get to outsource their waste management. And that moment, when the US responded the way that it did, showed us that the global north will use every possible power and agreement and agency that they have to ensure that the clothing continues to move. Yeah.
Thank you. And Thierry, do you want to respond?
Yes. Thanks for the question. I would say no, but I'm not saying. I would say no because, especially me, I would love to use my own cotton, but it's hard for me to use my own cotton to produce something. I have many ideas, to do with, to create with my own cotton, but it's not possible to use my own cotton because before to use the cotton, have to be germen. You have to take the seed away. But I try also to, to buy the cotton from the government, to ship to Blackmon through Liverpool. But this also doesn't work. Laurie can talk about. We try to use diplomacy, to contact people, to also contact the height. I will not say the name, but really to be in touch with people who is the head of this cotton business, but it doesn't work. But for me, it's also the way to say, some people have this, have the way to buy the cotton, but I still don't know how it works because from the some organization like the Catholic worship, they do amazing thing, but it's still maybe you need to have a lot money to buy the cotton. But I produce the cotton because to produce the cotton you have to be part of the association of cotton producers. So, like a conceptual artist, I started this project 2018. The first thing to do is to be part of this organization. So I did that. And the second thing is to produce the cotton. So before to produce, you need to be there, and then they will give you the seed, and you will have the seed, and then after the seed, you will have the fertilizer, and you will have also the pesticide and everything. So you have everything from the local for this association, and then you grow your cotton. And then when you grow your cotton, this cotton have to be sold to them. You don't put your own money. So it's like you are part of this collective, and then you create cotton. They buy the cotton, and they take their money from your production, and they give you back the rest of the money. So like that, it's hard for you to keep your own cotton, to say, I produce cotton, I can use freely. I have now 5 tons of cotton in my studio in Benin, but this cotton have to be shipped to Japan last year for Aichi Triennale, but I didn't get authorization to ship this 5 tons of cotton. And in the same time, I have to ship this cotton to here. Laurie knows how it was very hard. We tried to contact everybody, even in the government, to ship this cotton. We didn't get authorization. So what I did is, I was in Benin. I buy my ticket, go to Benin, and put 23 kilograms of cotton as one suitcase. Yes, yeah. To show in, to show in this. So you can see like it's a small, round cotton grown by me, but to bring it here is not easy. You have to be also like very polite to people, to talk, in the airport before to ship, before to bring. Even they find like cotton in your suitcase is in your own risk. Even to keep your own cotton, you have to pay. So I have paid last 2021 people money to keep my own cotton. So they say we are not, if something happen, you have to find out. So you find. But for me, directly to control the system, what I did when I was in Japan. There is another way also to keep control in cotton. It's very democratic. You can grow your cotton and then do what you want. But Japan doesn't grow cotton like in Benin. But the seed is really controlled in Japan. They have many different seeds. So I asked them, is it possible to have 3 grams of Japanese cotton to grow in Benin? And they said, no, you are not allowed. So, and then I was like, why? This politics is different is everywhere. So I asked them to give me 5 grams of cotton, Japanese cotton seed. So I shared this 5 grams in my cloth, in my suitcase. And then I was in Amsterdam, and then I put all together. I traveled to Benin. I stayed in Benin for 3 months. And I learned from Japan how to grow cotton seed by seed. So I grow this 5 grams, and now I have like 2 kilograms of Japanese brown cotton. So, and then this can be like the way to don't grow the white cotton from Benin seed, but to have my own seed and to grow a different color of cotton. But this is in a conceptual way, and also to learn and write history for the next generation.
Thank you so much, and thank you again to all our panelists. Please try and come back to the session for 2. Hold on to all the questions and thoughts and discussions that you want to sort of discuss later on. There is lunch here, and please do look around the rest of the town at the other exhibitions. But yeah, let's join me in thanking all of our panelists from this morning.